Hello and welcome to the Ice Guys, brought to you by the National Hockey Now Network. This is the show that takes you into the world of the National Hockey League. Every game, every day, from a betting perspective. With pro sports handicappers, Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith, and various guests from the world of hockey and sports betting. And now, here's your host, Ian Cameron.
Welcome to the Ice Guys, presented by National Hockey Now, Wednesday, May 31st. Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith. This is our, Stanley Cup final preview show, if you will, and we will get to a lot of breakdowns, discussion, analysis, and previewing the Stanley Cup final, which is now set, Vegas Golden Knights and the Florida Panthers. But we've got another great guest joining us here today, and man, he's got a lot of stories to tell us about what he's gone through in his hockey playing career, which includes almost 20 games in the National Hockey League with the Los Angeles Kings. He played, of course, with the Kamloops Blazers in junior Western Hockey League, team that is now in the Memorial Cup this year. He played over in Europe for many years, upwards of, at the professional level, almost 17 years, more than 20 if you include the junior days. But happy to have Jared Allen joining us here on the Ice Guys show. Jared, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no doubt. You've obviously had gone through a lot. We'll get to that. But talk about how it began. Obviously, Kamloops Blazers, Western Hockey League, ended up getting drafted, of course, into the National Hockey League. After that, spent 17 games with the Los Angeles Kings, the 2002-2003 season. So junior transitioning into the NHL. Start there.
So I was junior. I went through some good times, some bad times. I actually, started my draft year as a very highly ranked prospect, and then, I was leading the WHL in points at that point with 23 points in my first 9 games, and then ended up having bad luck with. I went to hit a guy at Key Arena in Seattle there, and my skate blade got caught in the boards, and then he fell on my ankle, and it got an avulsion fracture and tore all the ligaments. And then my coach at the time gave me a few weeks off and then made me play with basically a torn up foot. So I had to tape it like a cast and then remove it every period and then tape it like a cast and remove it again. And then just to get the circulation back. So I was basically playing on one foot. So I went from 23 points in 9 games to 55 points in 57. And I remember Colorado meeting with me in Calgary before the draft, and they still wanted to choose me in the first round, but they were worried that I wasn't going to make it through junior because we didn't have any toughness. So I ended up going 47th to Colorado. So they were happy that they still were able to land me and not give up a first round pick just in case, I wasn't able to survive junior. But we ended up getting Colton Orr the next year. So that was a big bonus. But went to Colorado's camp, with all the legends the year they won the Stanley Cup, and probably my best pro camp ever, because you kind of go in, you don't have huge expectations, you just basically go in and play your game, and I ended up being the last cut there, and then getting a call from Colorado halfway through the season to go up and play because they had a bunch of injury problems. But I wish I knew better at the time, but you hire an agent that's going to look out for you, but unfortunately this one was looking out for his pockets, and they wanted to bring me up to play some games, and he wouldn't allow it unless they guaranteed me 10 games and offered a little bit more money. Whereas, the reality is who knows how long I would have stuck around. I could have been there all year. You never know. And so that's the one thing I look back on that, I had control of, but I wish I understood a little better on protecting me. Because, to sit with Ray Bork, Joe Sakic, Patrick Waugh, Peter Forsberg.
That's what I was going to ask. Was
you got Adam Foote, you got all these guys there that, money can't buy those kind of life lessons and hockey lessons and experience. Right. To learn from them, because watching those guys in camp was.
Were you in awe?
Yeah, like Joe Sakic and Steve Yzerman were my favorite players growing up. So to be with Joe Sakic and on his team in the inter squad games and that kind of stuff was fun. And like I said, I inter squad games. There's one game that sticks out big time because I was on one team and then went to go practice, but then I got taken off the ice to go back to play with another team. So I got put on Sakic's team, and then I remember going to the bench. The game had already started, and then getting on the ice. He didn't even have a chance to really look up. And Patrick Waugh was the other goalie, but I hadn't really paid attention. I was kind of just like, okay, focus, get going. And I remember getting a pass from Messier to the slot, and going shelf on, and then being like, whoa. And they're like, because I just scored on Patrick Waugh. And I was like, this is nuts. Like, and then, and I ended up actually getting 2 goals and then scoring the shootout winner in that game. And Sakic was actually a big cheerleader for me then. And so it was huge because they take you in and they give you these lessons. And then when it came to my first exhibition game, we were playing Dallas. And I remember Ray Bork sitting beside me and saying, like, no pressure, kid. But when my first exhibition game, I got a golden assist. So I expect at least 1 from you. And then get there and score.
No pressure, though.
Yeah, scoring on Marty Turco that game. And it's the thing is when you have guys of that caliber telling you that they believe in your abilities, even though you're 18, it gives you a huge confidence boost where you know you got guys looking out for you that want the best for you and they want to see you succeed. And then I even remember, you know, after I scored, Sammy Hellenius, big cross check to my head the next shift, and nothing happened. And Bob Hartley in between periods asking the guys why they didn't do anything about it, because he said, you know, we got a young guy here who's a nice kid. You guys all like him. And then he takes abuse after scoring a big goal and nothing's done. And he's like, do you guys want to be sniffing chocolate and Hershey for the rest of the season? Because that was
That's interesting. Bob Hartley says that, because there's been some people that have not been big fans of Bob Hartley.
You know what? My first experience with him, I didn't like at the start of camp. I didn't like him at all because I got sick in camp and he kind of laid into me, ripped me apart. But then found out actually I was sick and then apologized. And so actually before my first exhibition game, he called me and he said, hey, the boys like you. You're a great kid. He's like, and you got a lot of skills. So just go out there and play. We'll take care of you. You do your thing. There's going to be older guys on opposite teams, opposing teams that get jealous of your skill level, and they will try and take liberties to scare you. He's like, so just play and we'll take care of it. So then when that incident happened and nothing happened, he was pretty frustrated. And then Adam Deadmarsh went out and fought him in the next period. But it was pretty cool. Like it's one of those things where you take, you know, AHL players, and you can take anybody probably from the AHL and put them in the NHL, and they'll never look out of place for the most part, as long as they know what they're doing. Whereas AHL, everybody's kind of, you know, you're playing as a team, but you're trying to sell yourself so you get called up. But at the NHL level, you're not going to produce as easily. But if you know you got to be here and get the puck here and do this, it's less confusing because there's more structure and guys know what they're doing. So that part of it was fun and a cool experience, especially as an 18-year-old to go there and, you know, be around so many legends.
To be in that camp, you know, we're talking Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, you know, Patrick Waugh, Raymond Bourque, and I'm so glad they won that damn cup for him.
Oh, yeah.
He deserved it so much. He had such a terrific career. The only thing missing was he didn't have a chance to win it in Boston, where he played most of his career with the Bruins. But the fact he was able to get one, I mean, everyone was thrilled for him, because that was the only thing missing from his just historic Hall of Fame career, was this winning that Stanley Cup and be able to win that. And that call that Gary Thorne had at that moment with him raising the cup, people will live that on forever. And after 22 years, Raymond Bourque, I mean, just an incredible moment. It was so great to see that. I mean, for you, as just a young kid, essentially straight up from the junior ranks in Kamloops, to be on the ice with these guys, I mean, you're just thinking, wow, this is special, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I think that part of it is somewhat missing from the game a little bit nowadays. I think, like, because younger players are given so much opportunity right away to be the man, whereas when I was young, you had to like play with the fighters and then you had to work your way up the lineup and still produce. Is, you know, these young guys come in and they're given all this opportunity that they're not as, like, I love their confidence, but they're not as like, holy smokes, like, look at this guy, this guy, this guy. But the guys who grind their way to get there, those guys, when you hear them interviewed, they're like, man, I was, you know, like for me, when I played against Mike Modano, watching, it was one of his best games where he did the one-handed Forsberg goal and he had 2 goals and assist, and his jersey's flopping around everywhere as he's buzzing around the ice. To me, it was like incredible to be around that. And I think sometimes now young kids take it for granted when they're very highly touted. Whereas you see a kid like Connor Bedard, who still says he has lots to prove, and you know what I mean? And so you want the balance of the confidence, but you also want them to have that eagerness and excitement to be like, holy shit, like, I'm sitting here, I'm on the ice with Connor McDavid, and I'm on the ice with, anybody, Matt Barzal, like it doesn't matter, McKinnon, it doesn't matter, but just these guys who have had such an influence on the game in the last little bit here to see that excitement.
No question. You ended up going back to junior after the Colorado experience, right? I'm pretty sure of that. You had that. That's when you had that amazing season, right? The 100 points that you had in 70 plus games. So that was just an incredible junior season that you had. But you ended up having your rights traded from Colorado to LA. How did that come about?
So it wasn't where Colorado didn't want me. It was LA got to choose who they wanted. So the trade was already made. I hadn't been traded yet. It was the prospect to be named later. So a couple scouts, Ace Bailey and Mark Davis, were following me and some other players around junior. And I met with them for lunches and dinners and got to know them, and they got to know me. And then I was the guy they wanted. And so, it was a huge honor for me to be just a part of that trade, because obviously Rob Blake's a massive legend, and just to go to a city that wanted me, but also not be released from a city that didn't want me. It was more so they didn't have control over it. Yeah. So, I was excited. My World Junior coach used to call me Hollywood. He thought I had a Hollywood personality, so it was kind of fitting to get traded to LA. But then woke up for my first training camp and turned on the TV, and 9/11 happened, and everybody was devastated. And then get to the rink to have the big pre-camp meeting with the whole everybody at camp, and kind of see that as expected, the mood was down, but it seemed a little like closer to home than we all thought. And then that's when I found out they pulled me aside and told me personally that Ace and Mark had died in a plane crash in 9/11. And so obviously your heart sinks for the organization and their family and the people really close to them. And then for me, it was I lost two people who I saw as role models and mentors for me in the organization, but also then didn't have scouts in my corner who knew me. And so now I had to prove myself again from the bottom and deal with the political side of scouts pushing their players and that sort of stuff. But you always find a way, and so went to the minors and then proved myself down there and earned myself a few call-ups.
Yeah, and so the season you ended up playing in the regular season for LA was the 2002. You were split between Manchester, the affiliate, in the AHL, and the Kings that year. You were with the Kings, 17 games there. And by the way, it was Andy Murray. I remember Andy Murray was the coach of the Kings at that time. How was he as a coach, Andy Murray?
He was good, very attentive to detail. Like if he told you practice was 43 minutes, and at the end of practice, if he said how long was practice and you didn't know, you're in trouble. But if you knew and then you look at the clock, it was exactly like bang on 43 minutes. He was good. He back then it was different. Like when you're a young guy and you're brought in, you played with, the bottom half. So I really didn't, I have 4 points, I think, in 17 games, and 3 of them were in the same game. It was the first game I got more than 6 minutes ice time, and got to prove myself and made a believer out of him and me. But then unfortunately had my injury the following year. But very, very detailed guy, very stern, kind of like Bob Hartley. Guys either liked him or didn't like him, and it's kind of, I guess, like politics nowadays. You're either way over here with him or way over here with him, and that's how people were. And so there was things I really enjoyed about him, and then obviously, like anything, there's things you don't agree with, but it's part of life.
And so at the time, you had this incredible junior run. People thought very highly of your skill level, but then it would seem like the next few years, as you were mostly in the AHL, the injuries mounted, the injuries accumulated, the increased. And obviously when you suffer the amount of setbacks from a physical and injury standpoint, like you did, it's going to wear you down. It's going to take away and limit your abilities to a certain degree. Talk about those struggles, which unfortunately, I'm sure plagued you quite a bit in the later 2000s there.
Yeah, it actually, it started in junior with the coach forcing me to play with an injury that I probably should have had surgery on. And then kind of, without getting too detailed about it, but kind of telling to put it in short, Mark Recchi now owns part of Kamloops Blazers, and told me that
Yeah.
when I played there, he wished he had a coach that coached me instead of competed with me. Because that coach used to always compare his stats with mine and say he had no toughness and I got to play through it. And I lived with my grandma and he didn't care if my grandma died and all sorts of stuff. And I was never a bad kid, so I didn't understand it. But obviously there was some either jealousy or competitive side to him. So it started there. And then, then I kind of, after the tragedy with Ace and Mark, I started to prove myself in LA, and then LA wanted to kind of make a statement to Anaheim about whose prospects are better, because Anaheim made the Stanley Cup final that year. So even though myself and Mike Camilleri already played a year of pro, LA put us in the rookie tournament.
Yeah.
And then,
that, by the way, that was, I just want to step in, that was the Babcock Anaheim team in 2002. That was the Jaguar team in Korea. When Stevens leveled him, he got back into the game and scored. That was that Anaheim team. Yeah.
So then I played in that tournament, and I remember Mike Camilleri's helmet getting, knocked off, and Shane O'Brien going after him. And so I just put my stick in front of O'Brien and said, "Hey, don't fight him. Fight a tough guy. Like, fight Peros," because Peros was on the bench. And so he decided to fight me instead, and it was fine. Like, I wish I actually had the video, because a lot of people probably don't believe it, but it was a good fight. And then in my head, I was like, I don't want to break my hand, cost me my career or whatever. So I tried to flip him over. And when I pushed him to flip, I pulled his pants towards me and then pushed his shoulder to kind of get him off balance. And then he hit the boards. And so when I pulled him back, I stepped on a stick and my shoulder was extended and he fell on me. So I snapped my bicep tendon and then tore everything in my shoulder, and missed 7 months of the season, and ended up getting traded to Washington. But only to find out, like, that one of my shoulder injury was one of the biggest, most botched shoulder surgeries anybody's ever seen, because it was done upside down. So, I've had arthritis and zero mobility really in that shoulder since I was 20. And
that's your left shoulder, by the way.
Yeah, it's my left shoulder. So if I try and go like this, like, that's as far as it goes. If I try and bring it out this way, like, I can't bring it out that way, and I can't bring it overhead. And so it was tough, and it's no excuse. Like, I still felt I was capable of producing and playing well, but I also understand, and I wish there was more open and honesty in this part of the game. Is I get it. I was a 20-year-old. If you don't want to invest in me because you're worried I'm not gonna, have longevity, just say it. Don't start reducing ice time and start trying to beat my confidence up and say what happened to you and all this other stuff. When, there were one game I got 4 points in the minors, and then I got scratched the next game, and it's like, hey, what's going on? Like, they didn't want me to succeed, it felt like, but I didn't know that. So then I started to question everything. Like, maybe I'm not as good as I used to be, and then obviously. Then you'd hear it from friends. You'd be at a barbecue in the summer and they're like, "Oh, you like, not friends, more like acquaintances of good friends," and being like, "Oh,
well, if they're needling you about this," I was going to say, what kind of friends are they?
Yeah, it's like, you were so good. Like, why'd you quit working so hard? And you flopped, and like, you had so much opportunity, or this guy's way better than you, and this guy's way better than you. And all you can do is just say, yeah, like, that guy's a good player, or like, and then just try and be kind and be like, you guys have no idea what my side of all of this is. And I'm not making excuses. Like, I'm a realist. I have a big quote that, excuses are the nails that build a house of failure. And I'm a big believer in that. So I'll take accountability too. I think there were times where, I relied on my skill and I did enough, but I didn't do more than enough. So, like, I did what everybody else was doing, but when you want to be the best or stay as a high prospect or a highly respected talent, you got to do more than everybody else. And and that doesn't mean you spend 6 hours in the gym. That might mean you, instead of shooting 500 pucks, you shoot 200 really good shots every day. Not just shoot to shoot, but you're shooting quality and doing, putting in the work that way. So there are obviously, I'll take accountability for that. But then there's also the side you can't control. So you put up numbers and then you get sat, or the constant beating of your confidence, or all those things. And the physical side of sports, to me, is the easiest to overcome, but it's the mental and trying to remind yourself to be confident and that you are one of the best and all these things is the most difficult. And, you know, you hear it from your parents, but how often do you listen to your parents until you learn the hard way? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's no matter if your parents, you know, they're always telling you the truth, but you'd still say like, yeah, you're saying that because you're my mom and dad. And then it's like,
no, it's not going to happen to me that way or something like that.
yeah, you know what I mean?
And you realize something happens like, wait, maybe they were right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, you know, I wish, so then I started working with mental coaches on how to stay confident, and, you know, watched all my games, and it allowed me actually, if a coach was like, hey, you turned the puck over too many times, this is why we pulled you back. And then be like, okay, I watched the videos. I took the pros and cons. They're all here in my notes. I don't see what you're seeing. Can we watch this? And then, because sometimes, you know, coaches, you know, play their favorites, or they associate you with something you didn't do just to have a reason. But that allowed for good conversations and whatnot. And I'm not trying to bash, you know, every team I was part of. There was things I loved about it, and there was things obviously you hated about it, but I'm trying to be a realist for people who listen to understand it doesn't matter how good you are. If you get injuries or you deal with people that, you know, you could remind a coach of someone they competed with when they were younger, so they don't like you. It could be anything. It could be a boys club where, you know, this guy was buddies with this guy and you ran his kid over in a game and whatever. It could be something very stupid, or it could be something legit, but you can't control that part. So don't think it's going to be easy, because I know a lot of people think, you know, like, you're playing in the NHL, you're playing pro hockey, you're playing in Europe, wherever you're playing. It doesn't get easier. You know what I mean? The expectations are higher. The mental side of it is very difficult, but you have to find a way to focus on what you can control and show up with a good attitude and a way to respond and sell yourself all the time. Because it is a grind on the body and on the mind. And as much as it's, you know, a great lifestyle, you make a lot of money. There's a lot of sacrifice these guys go through. There's, you know, they're sacrificing their bodies. Like, I can't lift my kids over my head. But all those negative setbacks, when you get to hold a trophy, or you get to show your kids pictures of when you played, or a hockey card, or the friendships you made, and the lessons you learned, and life lessons you learned, you can't replace that. And so, I mean, if I could do it all over again, I would 100% chase the NHL dream again. But I wish someone along the way would talk to you and say, hey, I know it's your dream, but you got to be ready for this. Not just, you know, you got to be big, stronger, faster, all that stuff, but you got to be mentally capable to handle someone telling you that you're not good enough anymore.
And you felt you didn't deal with that as well as you could have.
Yeah, I started to believe it. I started to believe, like, maybe I'm not. And then I, you know, changed my game a little bit. And then that's when I took time off, because I was dealing with my shoulder, and I was like, I'm not having fun anymore. And I'm a big believer that if you don't enjoy what you're doing, then you got to try and find something else to do, because time's the one currency you'll never get back, right? So you got to make the most of it. And so then I took a step away from hockey, and then a buddy of mine said that the coach from University of Calgary was really interested in trying to get me into play. And I was like, okay, if I can get into school, then perfect. So got in, and then that's when I really started to love the game again, and found my confidence again.
And you were 25, 26 at that time, right? Mid-20s, you were there.
Yeah, 25, I think.
Yeah.
So, you know, I played 14 games that year and had fun and enjoyed it. And then, you know, went to Oilers camp after that, and they wanted me to be their first call-up guy. And I told them I've heard that before, and they could have been being honest. But I needed to protect myself at that time. And so I said I was, you know, appreciative of that, but I'm going to take my talents to Europe. And then, you know, kind of reignited my career from there, and had a lot of fun, and, you know, felt appreciated as a person and as a player, and really enjoyed my time.
No doubt. And, you know, and that's what I wanted to finish off with, that is the European part of it. You know, we've had so many great guests, current and former players, Jared, so many good ones, and not a soul on this show has ever said a negative word about the experience of playing in Europe. No one. No one has said, in terms of just the landscape, the beauty of the areas, whether it's Germany, Italy, Switzerland, Sweden, you know, any country that they've played in Europe, even the UK, where they have the EIHL, the Elite Ice Hockey. It's incredible how many guests we've had that played in that league. the last few years as well. Nobody says a bad word. It's an incredible experience, and it's almost like, you're there because, you're not getting the dollars, obviously, you get, in North America in most leagues, but at the same time, you're there for the love of the game. You love playing, you have the passion for it. You're obviously maybe in a lot of cases going to get a greater opportunity, with a lot of these teams, and that's why you're there. That's why you're in for it.
Oh yeah, it's I got to experience Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, and finish my career up in the UK league so I could get my master's degree. But it is true. Like, it's, for one, as an import, you're going to get every opportunity to succeed because they brought you in. They're only allowed so many. And so it's up to you to either ruin that opportunity or run with it. And I was fortunate to find an organization in Sweden my second year that really believed in me and trusted me and allowed me to play my game. And I loved it. The fans there, when my mom got sick, they had a banner up that said, "Win this fight, Mrs. Allen." And then when she passed away at the end of the game, they had a banner when my first game back after she passed that said, "Rest in peace, Patricia Allen." And I don't think there's ever been anything done like that for a player's or an athlete in general's family member.
Wow.
I mean, you see it with the athletes themselves, but to see that, so that picture went viral. There's one of me in front of the fans, kind of teary-eyed and pointing up at my mom with the big banner in the background. But with all the achievements I've had in my career, that was probably the most rewarding because I was recognized for who I was as a person, not just what I was doing on the ice. And my parents were big believers in, hockey will speak for itself, but you have to be a good person first. And so I think that was a big reminder and would have made my mom proud, that she was recognized because of how I carried myself. So I think that's the difference between Europe and North America. Is in North America, buying a ticket is very status. Like, I'm going to bring a client to a game. We're going to chat business, and then, playoffs, different story. Everybody's going bonkers. But in Europe, those fans they're cheering for somebody. If you're at the game, they're cheering for somebody, and it's loud. They're proud. It's very competitive, and then outside of it, it's the traveling and touring around and the life experiences and scenery and places and monuments, all these different things you get to see is incredible. And then they don't have the processed food like we have over here, so everything is delicious over there. And it's just a really, I wish I actually did it earlier instead of missing those 3 years, but things happen for a reason, and I'm happy where I'm at and met the girl of my dreams and have 2 beautiful kids, and so life is good.
Yeah, exactly. And so you played several years in Europe, Sweden, Switzerland, Germany. You ended with Manchester in the EIHL over in the UK in 2019, 2020. So then you hung up the skates and called it a career. And so what are you doing currently? I know you're doing lots. You're staying busy right now.
Yeah, so I've coached a few minor hockey teams in the last few years, and then also doing a bunch of skills work, and I worked in a facility teaching kids and, anybody, juniors, pros, kids, shot technique and stuff that I've been studying since I retired, and probably should have been studying while I was still playing. But it's been fun. I mentioned to you before the show started that the nice thing about all the, pros and cons with the experiences I've had is that I can relate to anybody. I was a very highly respected top prospect, expect to go really high in the draft and have a long NHL career, and it didn't pan out, but I knew what it was like to be at the top. And then I knew what it was like to, lack confidence and not feel appreciated and not in control of my opportunity. And then also the adversity of injuries and trying to come back from an injury. And
hearing the narrative, as negative as it was for you at the time. Yep.
Yeah. So it's, I'm able to relate to pros that I work with and juniors that I work with, and then the young kids too. I think it's important with anything in life that you need to hear all sides of everything. And it's okay. Everybody says, "Oh, I could play in the NHL. Like, you pay me this much, I'll play in the NHL." And then it's like, okay, it's easy to say that until you got people ripping you apart if you have an off day or whatnot. It's or to get up at 6 a.m. and do this or do that. And I know a lot of people do it in other aspects of life, and hockey is definitely, a dream job, but it's not all bells and whistles like everybody thinks it is. It's a lot of sacrifice, hard work, mental toughness, because you're basically exposing yourself to the world and letting everybody come at you kind of. And like I can make a mistake at my work right now. Nobody probably even notices. I make a drastic mistake or a minor mistake that could cost a game. Everybody notices.
Everybody notices. Coaches, fans, ownership.
Yeah, and a prime example is my young 2011 group made huge strides this year, and was beating the top team who was beating everybody our last 3 times playing them. But then in the semifinals against a different team, we lost in overtime, and there was a turnover that took place, and then they went down and scored. And I made sure to remind parents, like, hey, be proud of the kids. I don't want to hear anybody talk about that mistake because it's, gets magnified by 100 because they scored. But those same mistakes happened out throughout the whole game. It's not, as obvious because there was no goal afterwards. And the nice thing is Mike Smith's son was on my team and he helped coach with me sometimes. And he was great, like super positive, but also could relay those messages. Like, what are you getting upset about? That same mistake's going to happen in the NHL tonight.
Yeah.
So don't be so hard on your kids over it. If their effort isn't there, okay, now we can talk.
If they're willing to learn too, and learn from it and what they did wrong and how not to avoid it in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And some parents wonder why I don't yell at the kids and do a ton of benching, but the reality is they're kids. It's not a business yet. And
if you're looking for torts, don't look for Jared.
Yeah, exactly. Now, how do you teach kids to want something if they're doing it out of fear that you're going to yell at them? You know what I mean? So
or Daryl Sutter or Keenan back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. Like I could scare the kids, no problem. But then are they doing it because they want to do it, or are they doing it because they're afraid I'm going to yell at them? And so you're trying to teach that accountability, and every kid says they want to go as far as they can. And I never say who wants to go to the NHL. I say who wants to play as long as they can.
Yeah.
Because I think there's this new stigma now, like there's parents building Instagram profiles for their young 7 or 8 year old and calling them next Sid the Kid, or like, like.
And you got to sometimes tell these kids too, Jared, and not just you, actually, anybody. You have to remind the kids, hold on now. There's 12 forwards and 6 defensemen on every NHL team. So that's like 18 spots for 30 teams. You do the math, 32 teams, you do the math. That's like only a few hundred. In the whole world that can play in the NHL.
And that's the problem. Is
it's not easy.
There is this extra pressure. And my concern, and so I'm going to say this because you guys got a platform, is that when parents do this, and I want parents to really think about this, when you're pumping your kid on Instagram or any social media, and not as a proud parent every once in a while, be like, oh, my son scored a beautiful goal today, but like building them their own Instagram to try and sell all these highlights. No scouts going on there and looking at anybody's Instagram. But what happens is if your kid doesn't make it, they forgot who they are. They're known as the next Sid on Instagram. They're not known as Jared Allen. And then I don't make it. Where's my mental health? What happens now? And Nat Don McKelly actually wrote a thing called The Hockey Sickness, where it talks about suicide and all that kind of stuff from kids, junior, you're suddenly a legend on junior because you got 7,000 people that follow you, and then you don't make it. Well, who are you now? And that's why I was very fortunate that my parents raised me to be me first and let my hockey speak for itself. Whereas now there's all this, people putting their kids in everything 11 months a year and like not letting them be kids. So they already think they're a hockey player. They don't even, they don't even want to play multi-sports. And it doesn't matter how many ex-pros, because there's tons of them here in Kelowna. Tell these parents, like, take a step back, chill. Let your kids be kids. If they miss the game, they're going to go shoot pucks. They're going to play street hockey. They'll play mini sticks, whatever. But to sign them up for everything just because that kid is doing it isn't beneficial. And their mental state, it's not beneficial for their mental state. When it becomes a business, people will know who they are. The scouts already know who they are. They know where to go. They're not going to your Instagram. I can guarantee you they're not going to your kid's Instagram. You know what I mean? So stop. And Adam Oates even said it about Zegras. He trains Zegras, and he said, I got to get the Instagram game out of his game. He tries to do it too much. And there is this now, kids want to chase this viral instead of actually chase hockey. And so I love the skill. I played with
fundamentals over fancy. That's a lost art.
Exactly. I played with that Swaggy P for a bit at that 3 ice thing before the Canadians weren't allowed to go back. And And that guy can do everything at full speed, and he's really good at it. But he also knows how to think the game. You know what I mean? And so, you're not gonna go to a baseball diamond and play catch by catching it behind your back the whole time before you can catch it in front of you. So focus on the fundamentals first. Don't worry about the viral. Focus on work ethic and getting better and loving the game, not loving what the game can give you. Because if you don't love the game, you're not going to love what it gives you. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of adversity to go through. You're not going to score every game. If you are scoring a lot and then suddenly you're on a 3-game drought, that's what everybody talks about. So it's you have to love doing it and love putting in the work and loving what it takes to get there. And then when you have bumps in the road, you got to remind yourself why you love it and then battle through it.
Yeah, it's great advice. It is, and not let the ups and downs and there's peaks and valleys for everyone's career and everyone's individual hockey seasons. You've got to work through the valleys instead of letting the criticisms you're going to get for your struggles or it beat you down. You've got to keep going through that. Someone in our chat, I wanted to mention this and put the comment up here about your shoulder, Jared. Same issue here, Jared. Same left shoulder. I feel your pain. So JT apparently in the chat has got problems with his left shoulder as well. So you're not alone apparently.
Wishing you the best there, JT, because it's not fun. Like it's the thing is with an injury is like you get everybody. Like my bones are growing backwards, and I get chiropractors, and I appreciate all chiropractors, doctors, acupuncturists, you name it, massage therapists, that all claim, come see me. We'll get you back to normal.
We'll get you back on track. And all they can do is help ease the pain.
Bones cut off. I need this. You might get a little bit of mobility back, but I need bones cut off. I need to rebuild. They still think they can do it. And it's like, I respect your talent, but unfortunately, this is a scenario you're not going to be able to fix without surgery.
Yeah, no question. Alex, is there anything you wanted to ask?
Just to say, it's unfortunate, with injuries. I had, I didn't have essentially an athletic career because of injuries I dealt with in my childhood, but nothing as severe as the things you went through in your professional and junior careers. And it's just like I said, it's tough when you kind of have this kind of like I said feeling of resistance against you in a way at times, when trying to battle and getting back to yourself, mentally and physically healthy, but then you got teams that have other plans for you and different things. So so that's hard to navigate, and I think that's something that kind of gets lost on us, especially even as sports bettors and handicappers. We don't tend to always kind of look as deep as we should into that and think that hey, as these guys who are on the bubble of getting called up from the AHL and to the NHL or trying to stick around with a team, how that can really affect the player and stuff. And so telling your story gives all of us kind of a clearer outlook on how that journey can be for some players.
And I've had to deal with it too, Jared, in terms of my own career. Like there's times I'm 1-9 and 10 last 10 recommendations or bets I've made, and I feel like it's a blow to my self-esteem. It's a blow to my confidence. But if I ever let it shake me or say, hey, you've lost your ability. Yeah. You've lost your, you've everything you've done that's worked for all these years. And now all of a sudden you're in a bad losing skid. And all of a sudden, you start doubting yourself a bit. I don't let myself get into that spot. All I do is I put my head down and I keep working. The next
that's day, the thing. And that's why, like, I don't want when I speak on my experiences, I don't want people to think I'm just referring to hockey, because it's everyday life. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. When you got to provide and take care of yourself, and then when you have a family, you provide for family. It's the pressure and being accountable and overcoming any type of adversity to get the job done and do it the right way, and secure your job is important. And so I think it's like you guys said, you guys have both been through it in different scenarios, and I think that's important for people to recognize in this message is that I didn't have the long NHL career I wish I had, but I got cool life experiences. I got to have a good career in Europe. I got a great family. I'm still working. I have my health, and before my mom passed, she used to say it. You can be sad, frustrated, go through all these different emotions, but never feel sorry for yourself. And so no matter how hard times get, I think it's important for people to recognize, like, I see a guy here in Kelowna all the time. He's got no legs and very small arms, and he skateboards everywhere. Wow. In the winter, in the rain with a bag of groceries, sitting on his skateboard, with little boots on, like where his legs aren't, and zero excuses, doesn't feel sorry for himself. And, it's inspiring. And, but we, for some reason, your girlfriend breaks up to you, life sucks. You get 4 minutes in this game, life sucks. It's like, okay, I got 4 minutes. And then it's like, okay, but I'm healthy. So I'm walking out of that game, I got my health.
No.
And tomorrow I get to show up at practice and say, hey, watch this. You know what I mean? So there's always, for some reason, we always focus on negatives. And that's why I try and keep a very positive mindset. And, you go through things, but not to let it control your day and all that kind of stuff.
No, and now, as I said, you're running a great business. You've got multiple kids now, a father, husband, married, and living, a solid life now in your life after playing the game for the number of years you did. And, obviously in a good spot with that at the moment. And like I say, as you said to me before the show, you're content right now and in a good place. So that's the main thing, at the end of the day. Are you ready to put your NHL analyst hat on, Jared? Because we'll do a little NHL talk here for the last bit of the show here. First of all, we want to talk about the couple of news items that have broken the last 24 hours. And there's been a couple. Andrew Brunette hired as the head coach of the Nashville Predators. The first, I guess you could say, official move by Barry Trotz, as the new GM of the Nashville Predators. John Hines fired and let go. What's funny is I've never been the biggest supporter of John Hines, as everyone knows. But I give him credit for at least getting Nashville to play, their butts off in the second half, of the season when they had traded away so many of their players that were impactful. Granlund and Jeannot went to Tampa, and of course, Ekholm went to Edmonton. And it looked like they were sellers at the deadline with the intention of not making the playoffs. And yet there they were battling right till the end, and they still almost got in. They didn't quit on the season, and it was a good finish. But nevertheless, it's Trotz's team now. And as anyone knows, a new GM usually wants to hire his own coach. And that's exactly what happened. And I'm glad Andrew Burnett's getting a chance. I thought when he took over for Joel Quenneville, who was kind of forced into resigning because of the whole Kyle Beach situation in Florida, when that came to light, and Andrew Brunette did a great job. They had a phenomenal regular season. They won the President's Trophy. I know they got bounced in a sweep by Tampa in the second round last year, which was disappointing considering you're the President's Trophy winners. But as we're finding out, the President's Trophy thing is a fucking curse right now.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody is winning a Stanley Cup in recent memory when they win that. Look at Boston this year. So I kind of thought it was a rushed firing of Brunette in Florida. I know the power play also was a big problem for Florida in the playoffs last year, and Brunette sort of took the bullet for that when he got fired. But I'm glad he's getting another chance now with the Nashville Predators, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he does there, Alex. And it's just I'm glad he's getting that second chance because while it didn't end well in the playoff run with Florida last year for him, he stepped in a tough spot. Coach Q was forced into resigning, and the team just kept on playing well and had that incredible regular season. For that reason alone, Alex, I think he's deserving of another head coaching opportunity, and now he gets it here in Nashville. Yeah,
absolutely. And there won't be as much pressure on him here in Nashville like it was in Florida. Obviously, taking over for Quenneville in such a tough spot midseason and, leading a club that was going to be one of the top of the East anyway. Getting there and then ultimately getting bounced the way that they did in the playoffs. So, like I said, he got a bit of an unfair shake getting bounced there. But now going into this Nashville situation where it's going to be a complete rebuild in due time. They've got a lot of things they got to do in order to be one of the top teams, even in that division level in the Western Conference in my eyes. So, I think he's the right guy to do it. I think he can get things going the right way. And I think with having Trotz the GM, things are going to be built, defensive minded, at hand. But I think that'll be a little bit of balance there with Brunette. They'll have to, he'll definitely need to get somebody on his staff who can work with that power play and improve things on that end as well. But the defense will certainly be there as well. And of course, with a goalie like UC Saros, they've already got something to build upon. So we'll be interested to see what Brunette can do down in Music City.
Yeah, there's no question. And then the other big piece of news was Brad Treliving, hired by the Toronto Maple Leafs as general manager. And look, this is not, wow, I'm going to ease into the job here and get hired and maybe get comfortable, have a tour around the MLSE building here for the first 2 days. Not one bit for Brad Treliving. He's got some serious friggin' work to do, and a lot of it You're talking about Austin Matthews, no trade kicks in July 1st. Mitch Marner, no trade kicks in July 1st. Expiring deals after this season coming up. Nylander's going to need a new deal. You've got a ton of free agents as of right now, UFAs, that you've got to tend to. What's going to happen to Luke Shen? What's going to happen to Ryan O'Reilly? What's going to happen to Ilya Samsonov, who became your number one goalie last year? They all are going to need new deals. So you talk about a busy offseason, and we wish him well, but man, I hope Brad Treliving knows what he's gotten into, because he's got a lot on his plate with this Toronto Maple Leafs team and pressure. The one thing is, he knows a little bit about the pressure. Calgary Flames aren't quite Toronto, but it's a Canadian market, and that's actually Jared's where he's from initially, Calgary, Alberta. But he, the Flames he did, and I think what the Leafs wanted in him, in their GM and Shanahan, and why they picked Treliving, is he's willing to be bold. He's willing to do something that's shaking up the team, if you will. And he did that, obviously, bringing in Jonathan Huberdeau and bringing in Mackenzie Weegar, of course, in that big-time deal with the Florida Panthers prior to last season. So a shakeup is something he's willing to do. It's the worst-kept secret, Alex, in hockey, that Brad Treliving was going to be the next GM. And all I can say for him is he's going to basically get to work starting tomorrow, because the stuff he's got to get done and the stuff he's got to figure out for this team is just, I don't know, the list is probably a mile long.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's got 4 weeks until the NHL draft. And like you said, with all those things that are going to kick in on July 1st, the draft being the 28th and 29th, you have to see what exactly he's going to do. And there's no guarantee here that he's just going to try to stay the course and just add pieces and re-sign guys and keep things rolling in the right direction, or at least in a forward direction, I should say, not necessarily right or wrong. But who knows? Who knows if he's been given orders to, blow this thing up, and he's going to do that on draft night, and we see, a big name get moved, 2 big names get moved. We don't really know. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens the next 4 or 5 weeks with this Maple Leafs team.
So I've read a story too from Elliot Friedman, and Elliot Friedman's usually pretty accurate and doesn't really get things wrong or try to spin things to that aren't exactly accurate. He's very professional, I think, when he's reporting shit. And what he said about this is, apparently when Shanahan talked with Treliving and with every GM that he interviewed, he kind of expressed to that GM and every GM he interviewed, every potential candidate, I should say, that he didn't want Sheldon Keefe fired. He would like to actually see Sheldon Keefe hang around as the head coach next year and be brought back. But I get that he likes what Keefe's doing there, but at the end of the day, I mean, is he right to say that? Because it's up to the GM at the end of the day. You're hiring the guy. If he wants his own coach, he's allowed to hire his own coach. I don't know if I would have said that. I appreciate that he voiced his opinion on it, but at the end of the day, that's the GM's choice, or at least it should be, whether Sheldon Keefe's retained or he wants his own guy. Jared, I know you're from Calgary initially. Does that make you a Calgary Flames fan? What did you think of Brad Treliving's the job he did there, and how do you think it'll go for him in Toronto?
I think he did a good job. I think hockey, the game's changed, and I think bringing in old school mentality all the time isn't. And I like Sutter, but I mean, I'm an old school player. But I think like we talked about earlier, there's this entitlement with younger hockey players coming up now that you basically have to get coaches in there that get to know each player and understand them as individuals. Because if you try and group them all together, then it doesn't work. I think he's one of the first guys who brought in players, outside of the Ginla era and Camilleri and that stuff, but brought in players that actually had a good career in Calgary. Whereas you seen when I was younger, after Lanny McDonald, Joe Nieuwendyk, and those guys were gone, there was Corey Stillman, there was Marty St. Louis. There were guys that didn't amount to anything in Calgary the way they ran their organization, which I don't know why. I couldn't tell you, but then those guys go off somewhere else and they have great careers. So I think Treliving in Toronto will be good. I think Toronto's biggest problem, and my wife loves Toronto, and I enjoy watching them play. I think their top guys are more concerned about the respect they get for off ice, fashion statements, and that kind of stuff, and who they hang out with, which I think it's cheesy. Because I think Matthews is a heck of a hockey player, and Marner, and I really enjoy watching them play. But I get it, the game's changing, but you don't see people talking about McDavid and Draisaitl's outfits all the time, and Nathan McKinnon's outfits and Sidney Crosby's outfits, because they don't care. They want to show up to the rink and make a statement, and I think that side of it, as much as people might not want to admit it, it becomes a distraction. Cool. I think Justin
That's
Bieber.
a fascinating observation, and I'll say that because there's some truth to that. You look at the way Matthews and Marner dress going to the game. They got the hats, they got the flashy, bright apparel.
All of them, like
yeah. And Crosby doesn't. They just a nice, natural little suit and tie for McKinnon and McDavid and Crosby and all these other players that, be honest, at playoff time have done a little bit more winning. Yeah.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I'd love to be in those guys' shoes and doing what they're doing in the NHL. But it's just as a guy who, had skill growing up and had big expectations, you start to try and pay attention to different things. And even, Zegras and Anaheim, I'll go back to him. He could put up way bigger numbers if everything didn't have to be flashy. And so you take this new, coming in. I don't remember the guy's name who was drafted first round from Tampa, but all I do remember, I don't remember his name, but I remember him saying that he was wearing a white suit because he's the best looking guy there, so he might as well be the best dressed. And it's like that mentality when I was playing didn't, care. So it's
people will look at you with that funny look. You say something
someone's
like that.
comment here that says that's a weird argument. Lots of guys are eccentric and still perform. Who? Patrick Laine is eccentric. He's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? Like and I'm not knocking them because they're doing great during this regular season. But when does it become you pay for how they do the whole season, come playoffs, all that stuff? Like, if I make it $10 million a year and then I can go golfing after the first round. You know what I mean? You got another 8 years of that salary. Like Matthews and Marner, and I love them as players. They're phenomenal players. But they have never done anything in the playoffs. And don't get me wrong, because the year before, I thought Marner's had a good playoffs. I think he set up people like crazy and they weren't scoring, and Toronto media was still ripping them apart. But, like this year, you got to step up. And I agree with them they just said Pasternak. So, I'll give him credit. But I'm saying you can always pick out a couple out of a group, but I'm summarizing a big group. And the ones who are too focused on becoming the next Paul Bissonnette, who was smart, you know what I mean? He wasn't expected to go out and score 100 points, but he was expected to stick up for his teammates. He did a good job of it. But I'm saying if you want to focus on that side, you better bring it every day too, in the playoffs and all that stuff. Because at the end of your hockey career, you don't want them saying like, great regular season player, awesome fashion in the playoffs.
You want great regular season player and winning in the playoffs. If the fashion's great, hey, if you can throw the fashion in there and some winning in the playoffs,
exactly. And if you can do all of it, do it.
Yeah, Pasta's the exception. Pasta does.
I get it. If you feel confident wearing certain outfits and show up to the games and look good, feel good, play good, perfect. But I think there's too much focus on the personality, and I think the game does have to grow personality. But you got to do the damage on the ice too.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a blend of both. I think I wouldn't just say there should just be a complete, exodus of personality, because the league definitely needs it. And if you look at how the NHL players are getting paid compared to the NBA and the NFL and Major League Baseball, there's a reason for that, because more people are watching, the viewers are higher because of the personality. So you got to have a little bit of both. But I agree. You should sacrifice one for the other. Right.
Yeah, you don't want to be boring. It just needs to be a balance. Like if I'm a coach and my players are dressed, super fancy and they're not showing up, I'd be like, okay, let's focus more on actually playing hockey. Yeah. Than your picture going on Instagram and everybody critiquing it out of 10.
But in due time, if you got 5 teams and 4 of the teams are dressing that way and they're winning, this other team that's not, then maybe it's not what the hell they're wearing, it's what the coach is doing. And exactly. Sometimes you got to, and I don't think this league has enough coaches right now. You could say it's even in the AHL, but certainly in the NHL, where, they can manage those kind of personalities. If you were to have an eccentric group of guys who could play their asses off and win cups, but do you have a coach that can really, you need a coach to rein that in. Look at the NBA, look at a Phil Jackson. You have to have a coach who can have those kind of differences of personalities and bring them together. I don't even think there's anybody in the NHL that can even do that right now as a coach.
No, and everything with Jackson, yeah,
like there's two extremes, because I mean I'm talking about, and I like fashion and that stuff too, but I'm knocking those guys about really.
Well, I know, yeah.
And you take Lamoriello, and they can't grow their hair out, they can't have a beard, they can't do any of this stuff, and it's like now you're taking away.
I've never understood that with him.
I still don't understand it. So it's one of those things again. It's you'll go here and here, and I'm only talking about that because sometimes I think players are too concerned about what all the fans think instead of just like go and do your job on the ice and make things happen.
Yeah, no doubt about that. How much time, Jared, do you have at your disposal right now?
I got about another half hour, 45.
Oh, very good. Well, we won't be that long, but we definitely want to talk some Stanley Cup Finals, and we're going to do that right now. Just an overall series preview. I mean, we'll be on Saturday at noon Eastern for our game day Ice Guys show for Game 1 of the series. So we'll talk Game 1 specifically. Today, just the series overall, series price thoughts, any series props that we're interested in as well, and just who we think is going to win and the matchups, all that good shit. We'll talk about it in just a minute or so. We shout out everyone in the chat. Hit the like button. It's been a great show, Jared. You've been awesome to just hear your thoughts and your experiences playing the game. And now we'll get your thoughts on the Stanley Cup Final in just a moment, and we will preview the Stanley Cup Finals. Vegas, Florida coming up right after we hear from Gramco.
Support for the Ice Guys is brought to you by Gramco. Whether you or your team's game is on the field, screen, racetrack, court, or the ice, Gramco is for the game. Grown by farmers who spent years developing premium hemp genetics, Gramco provides customers with consistent quality Delta 8 THC products ready for any occasion. Gramco currently offers numerous Delta 8 products, including vape cartridges, disposable vapes, pre-rolls, gummies, wake and bake coffee, and more. Gramco offers an enjoyable, legal high delivered discreetly and directly to you. Gramco is also available at many American retailers as well. You can get the best Delta 8 cannabis products on the market shipped quickly and discreetly from Gramco. And if you visit www.thegramco.com, use promo code ICEGUYS, you will get 20% off of every order, and any order that's on the site over $50 will be shipped free with standard shipping. So live elevated with Gramco and check out their wonderful Delta 8 products today.
All right, it is time to talk Stanley Cup Finals. It starts Saturday. It's not the Stanley Cup Finals that I'm sure a lot of people envisioned, but here we are. Florida Panthers, Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas current series favorite, -130. Of course, they have home ice advantage. Game 1 will be in Vegas at T-Mobile Arena on Saturday night. We did a pre-recorded Ice Guys show yesterday with Jimmy on the show, if you haven't checked it out. So I gave a lot of thoughts already, but I'll be brief here with talking about this. I think it's a tough series to call, but I've got a small future piece of Vegas, just tiny, which I said I'd take it after they beat Edmonton, and I did. But again, it's not the price you could have gotten before the playoffs. It's not the price you could have gotten with them before the season, certainly. But I said if they beat Edmonton, because I thought Edmonton was going to be the team representing the West, then I'm all in on Vegas, and I'm gonna lean to Vegas here in this series. But I do feel I need to bet Florida a little bit for the series price, because Florida's wiped out all my futures really in these plays, especially Carolina in the last round. So I'm going with Vegas. My official pick to win the series is Vegas. But I am actually going to bet a small Florida series price to sort of hedge that Vegas Cup future position that I have going into this. It should be a great series. There's a lot of people concerned from what I've read and heard about the layoff for Florida, because this is going to be the longest layoff they've had, over a week since they beat Carolina. Yet they did win Game 1 against Carolina, that marathon quadruple overtime game, after almost a 1-week layoff from after beating Toronto in the second round. So you have to keep that in mind. The way I see it, though, and I've said this about Florida too last round, is that, we saw Vegas or Boston have the edge in terms of blue line. We thought they had the edge in terms of greater depth on the blue line, Boston over Florida, same with Carolina, and it didn't matter. And yeah, 1 through 6, I think I like Vegas's blue line more than Florida, with Martinez and Pietrangelo, Cup winners, both of them. Shea Theodore, Braden McNabb, outstanding. Zach Whitecloud and Nick Hague, I've said it over and over again, although Jared might be hearing it for the first time. I think it's one of the best third pair defenses in the NHL right now. Zach Whitecloud and Nick Hague for Vegas. They are incredibly deep 1 through 6. There's no question about that. I think up front it's a little closer, but Vegas, it's hard not to give Vegas a slight edge in the forward group in terms of that, because we saw the fourth line for Vegas in the clinching game against Dallas. Who got them going? It was William Carrier with Nicholas Waugh and Keegan Colasar. It was that fourth line that got them on the board, and they were outstanding early in that game. And that's the fourth line doing that shit for Vegas. So it was very impressive. Obviously, we know Mark Stone, the captain's playing on the third line with Stevenson. Chandler Stevenson's had a great breakout season and a terrific playoffs for Vegas as well. And then you look at the top two lines. I mean, Carlson and Smith have been great on that second line. The top line's outstanding. Eichel with Marchessault, who's on fire going into this series, and Ivan Barbashev. As I've talked about, Ivan Barbashev's been absolutely outstanding, a great addition from St. Louis at the deadline. So that's a great four lines they've got. Florida, though, with Verhaeghe, Barkov, Duclair. Barkov didn't produce much in the first two rounds, but he got his offense going against Carolina, and he's done a great job shutting down the best players on the other team. What did Austin Matthews do in the second round against Barkov for the Panthers? Not much. So he's been a great in the shutdown role, which is what we expect from Barkov. He's one of the better defensive centers, very much in the mold of Patrice Bergeron in the NHL, no question. Cousins, Bennett, and Tkachuk has been a very effective line. Tkachuk, it goes without saying, he's been Mr. Clutch all playoffs. Verhaeghe and Duclair have really contributed nicely offensively for Florida. E2 Kuhlman, Luostarinen with Lundell and Reinhart, the third line solid. And then all of a sudden you saw the fourth line, Ryan Lomberg, scoring a big goal in that clinching game in Game 4 against Carolina. So if they can get the Lomberg, Eric Stahl, Colin White group, making an impact, kind of offsets what Vegas rather has with their top four lines. But should be a great series. It's tough to really call it because of just Vegas is on a roll. Florida, this magic carpet ride, man, it kind of feels stupid to go against that considering just how strong they've been. And I think at the end of the day, assuming, he hasn't had too much time off and the number of games he's played doesn't catch up to him because he is the older of the two goalies, but you do have to give, obviously, goalie Bob, Sergei Bobrovsky, the edge probably as far as goaltending, even over Aiden Hill, who's been just much better and exceeded any expectations that I'm sure Vegas had of him going into this series. So fascinating to see how it goes, but I am going to say Vegas hoists the cup. And it is worth noting, too, these teams that have just barely gotten into the playoffs, other than LA that year that they won the cup, many of them that they're just barely getting into the playoffs and they get to the Stanley Cup final, they have lost in the Stanley Cup final. Nashville did against Pittsburgh a few years ago. Montreal did a few years ago against Tampa Bay. So sometimes the Cinderella run from the 8th seed or barely getting into the playoffs, and they don't finish the deal if they get to the Stanley Cup final. So a tough call, but I'll side with Vegas minus 130. Although from a betting position standpoint that I'm in, with having Vegas futures to win the cup, I will hedge a little bit on that with Florida plus 110 here in this series. I want to point out Paul Maurice. I said it yesterday. I'm happy for him. Jared will give his thoughts too, I'm sure, on Paul. But Paul, to me, is one of those coaches I could listen to him talk all day because he gives you everything. He's very honest. He's a great speaker. That's another thing. He commands a room. You can tell. And he'll give you so much. It's not 2-word answers. Like, he'll go into great detail, be very honest, be very forthright. The fact that he had the guts to rip his team publicly in that regular season game against Toronto, which I think was the turning point for their season, calling them, "You're playing like fucking bitches," is what he said on the bench there. And he could tell it. You could tell he was livid. They were playing awful that night. They come back, win the game. They have this great finish in the regular season from that point on when he had that tirade behind the bench, and the rest is history. They get into the playoffs, and now here they are. Red as hot as can be. What, a 12-1, 11-1 in their last 12 games going into this series. So great series. I don't want to hear the Canadian narrative that, it's a bore series. It's two non-hockey markets. It's two teams we don't give two shits about. I care. I'm Canadian and I care. I'm into this series. I'm interested in it. I think it'll be a good series. It doesn't matter to me who's in the cup final. Yeah, do I want a Canadian team to win? Okay, sure. But it doesn't mean I'm a hockey fan. And it bothers me that I hear this narrative that in Canada now we don't have to pay the least bit of attention to this final because it's Vegas versus Florida. I care. And if you're any kind of hockey fan, you should fucking care too. I don't like that narrative that, oh, Canada's out of the cup chase again. We can shut our minds off and our eyes off and not watch now, not care, and pretend like we hate hockey. It's a BS mindset as far as I'm concerned. If you love the sport and you have passion for hockey, you're into the Stanley Cup final, for crying out loud. I don't care who's playing. There's my rant on that. Alex, what do you think here? Stanley Cup finals.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. You know, you should care about the championship in the biggest league of the biggest sport. You know, in the sport. But at the same time, I could see where some people may not have as much interest as it would with other matchups. Now, the reasoning for it, like you said, is mostly crazy. You know, you got Canadians saying, "Oh, because there's no Canadian team." You got Americans, like I said, here in Minnesota. I know I've already heard it. I'm going to hear more of it, of the whole, you know, there's no ice in Florida. Or, you know, Vegas just got their team a few years ago. Here they are back in the finals again. You know, they all think it's, you know, some convoluted bullshit as to why these two teams got here. No, these are two great hockey teams who played their ass off the last several weeks, won 3 very difficult series against formidable opponents. And here they are trying to settle it in another best of 7 to see who's going to take home Lord Stanley's Cup. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, you know, once the puck is dropped. And however you feel about these teams going into the playoffs or during the postseason or even just in general overview, they said, you know, you put that aside for what's going to be some good hockey. We're going to see some great narratives and storylines here. And it ultimately will be an interesting series. Now, I lean with Vegas. I've taken some shots with Vegas. The way that I bet this, as far as series goes, is tied a lot to game 1. I've split up a unit between Florida to win game 1 and Vegas to win the series. I saw that at plus 450 at BetMGM. I also took a shot with plus 145 on Vegas to win game 1 and Vegas to win the series. Much better price than what you're getting laying 130, laying 135 on Vegas right now to win the series. Also, another great thing to look at if you like Florida to win this series, you still are in a better position to take Sergei Bobrovsky to win Conn Smythe at plus 200, as high as plus 250, rather than laying, you know, or taking plus 110, or even laying $1.05. That's the other price I've seen with Florida to win this series. Grab Bobrovsky because one or two things could happen. One, Florida wins this series. Bobrovsky being the veteran and being, you know, the kind of season he had rolling into this postseason, didn't even start the postseason as the number 1 starter. It seems like he's a shoo-in to win it on the Florida side. But there is that, you know, I like to call it the J.S. Giguere kind of clause, too, and something I look at when you're looking at betting a goaltender with the Conn Smythe Trophy, is that you could have a goalie have a tremendous series, a tremendous postseason, and even if the team doesn't win the cup, he could be rewarded with playoff MVP. So I think that's a decent look to throw down on if you do like Florida in this series, or even if you're looking to just grab somebody to win the Conn Smythe. This could be one of those years where if it's, you know, this low scoring series that we've seen the last couple of rounds from Florida, and every game's 2-1, 3-2 going in overtime, and Vegas just happens to win the series in 6 or 7 games, where it could have easily swung where Florida wins at 6 or 7 because of the overtimes. Bobrovsky might get rewarded with that. And one last thing I like series-wise, in saying that this could be a tight series, I love overtimes. I'm on the draw in game 1. I've also gone back to the well with that overtime series prop bet. 3 overtimes in this series at plus 800. I think this series goes 6 games. I can easily see 3 of them going past 60 minutes. And I even took a small sprinkle. This is available at Bet Online, but you might be able to find this as some other domestic books too with the increase of props. I have Will a game going to double overtime or longer. Just one game in any part of this series at plus 700. So it's a yes/no prop that I was able to find at Bet Online. I took a shot with that.
We saw 4 overtimes in just one game for the Florida Panthers, of course, in the Eastern Conference Finals. We saw multiple overtime games that none of them went past the first overtime in that Dallas-Vegas series, but still, we got there. And with, you know, Aiden Hill not showing any signs of, you know, issues in goal and how good he's been, and obviously it goes without saying with Bobrovsky, you know, it could be a long overtime, you know, if we get overtime games in this series. So double overtime, or one game to go to at least double overtime at plus 700, which is a great price. You know, 100 pays 700 on that if it wins. You know, it's definitely a good price, I think, to take a chance with that. I'll get into my props in a minute. I mentioned some of them yesterday. Jared, what do you think here? Stanley Cup Finals, Florida or Vegas? Who are you going with?
I think if it's tight, I think if the games are tight, I think it goes Florida. I think watching the playoffs, Florida's a very opportunistic team. I don't think Vegas has played anybody that's quite as physical as Florida. Like, Vegas has their strong decor, but if you got Pietrangelo frustrated with what happened in the Edmonton series, and you got Sam Bennett running him over like he did, was it
Slavin? It was
Slavin,
Slavin, yeah.
Slavin that last game. Then who knows how they're going to respond, because they haven't really been, I don't think they've had any like crazy physical series. So I'm curious in that department. I'm curious how Adin Hill is going to handle Matthew Tkachuk passing around the net, because it's easy when you've had a ton of experience with a lot of games to kind of drown those guys out. But when you haven't played as much as you'd like to have that guy kind of in your ear all the time. I do think if Vegas plays consistently, like I think that 4-2 loss to Dallas, like I don't even think Vegas should have been a big part of that game. Personally, I thought Dallas kept giving it to them, and then they'd get a goal, and then Dallas got it back, but they got pretty lucky there. In order for Vegas to win, I think they have to buckle down, focus on what they control, not allow the outside noise to play a factor, because it seems like in the playoffs when they did lose, they didn't even show up. And so the difference between Vegas and Florida, in my opinion, is that Florida, every game was a game. Like they had to win. They showed up, whether they won or lost, they still showed up that day. Vegas has more to offer. They should, like you said, the decor, their offense has a slight edge. And the only real advantage that Florida has is Bobrovsky, who seems like he's just on a whole other level right now. But if Vegas pieces it together and shows up, like Cassidy said, and doesn't try and do all this other stuff where they have those 24 turnovers or whatever, and if they play like they did in that last game against Dallas and kill their mojo early because they came out quick, then I think they have a huge opportunity to win it, because Florida has not been a team that gets a lot of shots. And so if Vegas takes control and is outplaying them and gets up early, as opportunistic as Florida is, I don't think they can come back from being down, because Adin Hill is a little different factor than what Florida has played in the playoffs so far. I didn't think Toronto's goaltending was very good. So you have it's tough. Like you said, it's a tough series to call because, well, for one, being a Canadian, it's not like we're dialed into those teams all season long. My father-in-law is actually Chandler Stevenson's agent. So,
oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, we'd like to see that happen. But he also owns a bull riding company. This is hat. It's NFP. It's Stanley. You got to patent it. It's for no publicity.
Little rodeo, huh?
Oh yeah, but he. So
I do watch the Calgary Stampede. I must say that. That's one event I watch every year, and I can get into it a little bit. The bull riding, the saddle bronc, and all those events. Yeah, I don't mind it.
Oh yeah, those guys are crazy. But I think it just comes down to, watching this first game, see who shows up nervous, see who doesn't. The pressure is on Vegas because they have been there before recently. And so that's another factor that people probably don't think about, is how much pressure are these guys, the six guys.
I think of it the other way, Jared. How much drive this team has in them to win it this time.
No, I know, but it goes both ways, because there's drive to do it, but then what happens if they have a setback? Are they like, right, we've been here before, like I didn't like it, or do they have the character? And only the coach knows the player's character. Yeah. But I think it's going to be an exciting series. I think you're going to see a lot of, entertainment. I think it's going to be very physical. But like you, I think Vegas is probably going to be the one to squeak it out. But you never know with injuries and stuff, if it is a real physical series on how they handle it. Because like I said, I didn't like how when Pietrangelo did what he did to Draisaitl, that his comments were, well, they're coming after me. And it's like, well, when you're good.
You get used to that. You're number one D guy.
You've experienced it your whole life. So it shouldn't change how you play the game. You should actually expect it every game.
You're a number one defenseman, man. You're going to be a target. They're going to.
Yeah, that's my concern
Yeah.
with him. The same way it was my concern with Ben when he was making excuses about his actions. It's just like,
oh, I went off, Jared. You got to come out, or I got to send you the clip, or I got to point it in your direction. The Jamie Benn show, the rant I did. It was epic.
Yeah.
I lost it. I couldn't believe how he handled it from start to finish.
No, and that's the thing. They're leaders. Like, you're a leader.
That he went out the back door and didn't say shit after the game, and then he comes back the next day with that candy ass fucking ridiculous excuse that I was a landing spot. There's no landing spot that says drive the stick into the guy's head and neck area. There's no landing spot that's that.
When you're a leader of a hockey team, you don't, like I said earlier, excuses are the nails that build the house of failure. Yeah. And I think it backfired on Ben the way he handled it, because
and look how they responded for him in his grand return in Game 6.
Yeah, they were awful. They were awful. And so when Pietrangelo is the man on D, who had a hell of a hockey season, shows how easily he can get frustrated. What do you think Kachuk's going to do? What do you think Bennett's going to do coming into the series? Like, they're going to try and run him over all the time because they know he's going to might do something stupid, or they know that it's going to take him off his game. So it's all those hidden games within the game that it's.
And each hit you tack onto Alex Pietrangelo or Theodore or Martinez, for that matter, it adds up in the best of 7 series and a number of games, and you feel it even more each time you get hit like that.
Yeah, because I mean, even after that Bennett hit on Slavin, I saw Lomberg almost catch somebody too. So they're going to be looking for it.
Yeah.
So that's the only kicker for me is how durable are the Vegas D core when these guys are going to probably most likely be running in there trying to run people over. And then will Vegas get in front of Bobrovsky? Are they going to get to the dirty areas and create that chaos for him? Because I mean, you take his eyes away and you got guys like Eichel and Marchessault shooting pucks and Stone, like they got chances. So I'm excited for it. I wish it wasn't starting on Saturday. I wish it was starting earlier.
It is a long wait. Yep.
Yeah. It's but I
do that for TV because they don't want the NBA and the NHL Stanley Cup Finals on the same night.
Yeah, which makes sense. And like people that are, like you said, that are from Canada are like, as a Canadian team that's not in it, it's still great for the game. Like
it absolutely is. Yeah.
2 teams that have never won it, that are they're playing for a chance to win it, and in 2 climates, in 2 cities that any of us would probably love to play hockey in. I think it's going to be big. I think both cities are going to be, the fan turnout's going to be crazy. You see it in Florida where you got celebrities.
They're into it now. Yeah, Kep is there every game now. Yeah,
showing up, and then Vegas always has their entertainment value, and so I think it's huge. I think it's going to be exciting. I think I can't say, like, I can't even convince myself on who's going to win. That's why I'm not a betting man. but I think it'll keep it exciting for everybody who is betting on it, and I do think it's going to go 7.
I always prefer regular season betting, Jared, and over the playoffs, because there's just more games, there's more opportunities. Like, I had a terrific regular season. Playoffs have been up and down because it's tough.
The thing is too, there's that, like I said, there's the game within the game, and like if there's a history between players, and I don't know if there is any real history between any players, but it can change a player's level of play at any point. You know what I mean? Like, throughout my career, there were guys like, yeah, okay, you're dirty, but I knew it. But then there were guys who I knew weren't just dirty, but they were very good at hiding it. So it was like, okay, I really have to be aware every time that person's on the ice that I'm protecting myself and still making things happen. And it's not that easy sometimes. And so it will be interesting to see if there is any of that game within the game type stuff happening. And I'm actually curious to see some of the press conferences and kind of mental games that are played in those, just to get in each other's heads.
There will be. I'm sure at some point someone will say something that raises a few eyebrows. That sometimes happens, especially in the Stanley Cup Finals. I still remember it from the '93 NBA Finals. They ended up losing the series anyway, Phoenix against the Chicago Bulls. I'll still always remember what Charles Barkley said when they had brought the series back to Game 6 in Phoenix, and Chicago had got the parade planned and the parade route planned after Game 5 in Chicago, and they thought it was already over. Bulls were going to go back home and win Game 5, and sure enough, Phoenix ended up winning on the road, brought the series back to Game 6. That's where they lost. And then Barkley said to people out in the press conference after, take that shit off the windows. You're not going to need them tonight. All the Bulls championship signs that he saw in people's windows. But unfortunately, they got to bring those out after the very next game. Game 6 in Phoenix that year. But it just goes to show you, someone will say something like that. Like it'll just be one of those, deals where, hey, they said something pretty interesting there. And you often will get that definitely in a Stanley Cup final. I'll just throw out quickly some props. We'll get into this more on Saturday's show as well. Anything Jonathan Marchessault, whether it's 3 goals or more in the series at a nice plus price, whether it's top goal scorer, top point scorer. I like top point scorer at plus 650. Jonathan Marchessault in this series. He's not the favorite, but he's a good enough price, plus 650, where I think there's definitely value in him being the top point scorer in this series. What did he have? Like 11 points in 6 games to end the Dallas series, and at the tail end of the Edmonton series. I think he is just on a roll. And what I love about Marchessault's game, little undersized, but man, goes to the front of the net, goes to the middle of the ice, goes to the slot, the tough areas.
Too, right?
Yep.
There's going to be some hatred there where he's going to want to make a statement to Florida.
That's an excellent point, man. I didn't even mention that yesterday.
But it's funny because, it's like we talked about earlier about opportunity and control of everything. Is like you look at Vegas team and how many guys were just taken, even Seattle, that didn't have an opportunity where they were, and now they're thriving because they're given an opportunity. So
that is such a good thought to have, and it totally slipped my mind. And you just mentioned it, Jared. I thank you a million times over for saying that. It strengthens my position on Marchessault to have a big series. This is the team that punted on him in the expansion draft. And obviously Vegas ended up swooping him up. And oh man. And he's playing great. It's like he's hotter than a pistol right now as well going into the Stanley Cup finals for the Vegas Golden Knights. So there's no doubt. Yeah, plus 900. There's better prices than even I'm seeing. That was at Bet365. It was plus 650, plus 900 at both. And that's the one I like even more, the point scorer over the goal scorer prop, because the points he's been getting a ton of assists too, not just scoring goals. So the point prop is what I really like there.
Question for you on the assist thing, just because I was a playmaker when I could score too, but I became more of a playmaker. Why doesn't the NHL have an assist award?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a great skill to that. It's a vital part of making a team successful.
There's no award.
The ability to decide pass instead of shot, pass up a shot to get a better shot for your teammate kind of thing. Yes.
Yeah. Well, look at Jonathan Chichu. I'm not taking anything away. The guy could score, but Joe Thornton set him up like crazy.
Well,
Wayne
lot for a few good years.
Wayne Gretzky doesn't have a award named after him. How
about Anthony Carter with the Sedins? Same thing. Yeah.
But as I'm saying, but with the Art Ross Trophy, I mean, usually the guys who win that have way more assists than goals. So that's kind of the de facto, kind of lead into, even though it's not always the most assist guy. But I get what you're saying. But that's kind of the award that really kind of rewards that, your overall body of work influence.
Yeah.
No, I know, but they just separated everything else. And I just say it because as a minor hockey coach, when you're telling a kid to move to the puck to the guy that's open, and they don't want to, it's like, well, how do I stress it?
Well, no, at that age, you're selfish. You want to score the goal.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I just think there's some recognition there for guys that set guys up a ton.
Yeah, Marchessault obviously in head-to-head point props, I would probably favor him over anybody, JT. So yeah, if you're interested in that, there's no doubt. But no question. 1 goal, 6 assists at home in the last 2 rounds. Oh, great. Rich is on top of this today with some great numbers here. Marchessault, last 2 playoff rounds, 1 goal, 6 assists playing at home in Vegas, 8 goals on the road. So he's been scoring more on the road. He's been facilitating, and he's been assisting more at home. So very interesting there, Rich, with that stat.
A good call by that one fan there, too, on Riley Smith.
Yeah, Panthers threw in Riley Smith there's a couple of ex-Panthers that are to have a chance to beat them in the Stanley Cup Finals. Yeah, Riley Smith's another one. Yeah, it's just the Florida's the team that they were with that left them unprotected in the expansion draft when Vegas came into the league, because they're day one Vegas Golden Knights, both of them, Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault.
2 of the 6.
Yeah, you talk about look, motivation is just it's a factor in betting and handicapping, Jared, that a lot of people overrate. That everyone, look, both teams are trying to win a Stanley Cup, okay, and get their name on the Stanley Cup. Everyone's fucking motivated. Don't get me wrong.
Oh,
Trust me, they are. No question. But I'm talking about that extra personal chip that might be on your shoulder. That extra little, hey, this team gave up on me. This team gave up on me. This team quit on me. If you're Riley Smith, if you're Jonathan Marchessault, so that fuels you even more, when you see something like that. And Jared, you can speak to that too. You had people, giving up on you.
There's always a part of you that wants to give the silent cue without actually saying it, and
they'll let their playing do the talking, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's people in everyday life, same thing. Like, that's why I went to that 3-ice tryout, was to, one, because I had the daughter at the time and I wanted her to see her dad play hockey, even though she probably wouldn't remember because she's so young. But it was to prove to all these people that knew nothing about my shoulder injury or all the stuff I went through in my career, to say, hey, I still have skill. Like, the skill was never gone, but you do it by what you do on the ice and not by saying it. So I think there's going to be some hidden extra motivation from some of these players.
All right, good stuff indeed. Alex has got to run, so we'll just get hit. We don't have. You can throw out a best bet, Alex, if you want, but if he does. But yeah, Alex is going to run in a few minutes. We're going to wrap up the show as well in just a couple of minutes. As well right now. Thanks to everyone, by the way, for joining us. Hit the like button. We will wrap up the show in just a moment. I'll give you a best bet, actually, even though there's no game today. Just an overall series best bet. We'll give you one before we sign off. Again, reminder to check out patreon.com/iceguys. That, again, just $10 a month for that. We've got tons of great Patreon exclusive content that we're going to be adding. We're going to do a few more segments with current and former players for our Patreon members. And also excited to announce that we're going to have longtime NHL broadcaster who hasn't been in it for a few years now, but he was at TSN in the 1990s, a lot of World Juniors, Spengler Cup, you name it. And at Hockey Night in Canada last decade, Paul Romanuk will be joining us on Monday's show. So looking forward to speaking to him. I mean, he's seen a lot. He's called a lot of games in NHL World, like I said, NHL World Junior, Spengler Cup. He did so much in his career, and he'll be on with us on Monday. So we are looking forward to that on Monday's Ice Guys show at 2 p.m. Eastern. Evan, Paul Romanuk joining us, who's actually got a great Beatles podcast going these days. If you're a big music fan and you love the Beatles, and they are one of my favorite bands of all time, his Beatles podcast definitely worth checking out as well. Jared and I will wrap things up. Alex, in our private chat here, Jared saying great meeting you. So
yes, you can chat with him too and getting to know him.
Absolutely. Great stuff. We'll wrap up the show in just a moment with best bets. Of course, for Jared, it'll just be who he likes in the series. We'll wrap up with that in just a moment, right after we hear from Manscaped. Support for the Ice Guys is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you, 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the promo code ICEGUYS. That's promo code ICEGUYS at manscaped.com. If my math is correct, it's about 14 million balls that you can preserve. The Performance Package 4.0 is the complete accessory package to take care of everything that is required. You've got, of course, the Lawnmower 4.0. Takes care of your facial hair and among other things. You've got, of course, the Weed Whacker. I'm approaching 40. Nose hair has become a major issue. It pisses the hell out of me. I need to take care of that shit, and the Weed Whacker can help you do that. Both of these products, waterproof and a 4000K LED spotlight for a more precise shave. And you'll also be able to take care of those delicate areas with the ball toner, with the ball deodorant, keep you smelling good, looking good, and feeling good down in the nether regions. This complete Performance Package 4.0 will take care of everything for you, for all you guys out there, and it's courtesy of our good friends at manscaped.com. So get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code ICEGUYS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. And use promo code ICEGUYS. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. All right, it is time to wrap it up with best bets. Jared Allen, I can't express enough how much I enjoyed it having you on the show. Your stories are really interesting, and it's a show of how you persevere. You go through ups and downs in life, but you keep moving, you keep going, and you push forward. And you're a great example of that. So after your hockey days, now that they're done, we wish you well. We wish you your family well. And you know what? We'll probably get you back onto the show at some point because it was just so much damn fun having you with us here on the show today.
I'd love to. I had a lot of fun too. So thank you for having me. And like you said, it's focus on what you can control. And there's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of distractions, adversity, and do what you got to do. What's best for you.
Absolutely. All right. Who you got now? Vegas, Florida, Stanley Cup final. Final prediction right here. Who do you think is winning that cup?
I'm gonna say Vegas. Part of me was gonna say Florida just because I think after Keith Tkachuk kind of called out the group, they've really responded with something to prove. But I'm gonna give the slight edge to Vegas right now. But I want to see game one. But I'll give it to Vegas right now, and my opinion might change after game one.
Yeah, that's what I'm Vegas for me as well, minus 130. Like I said, I'm not taking the series prices. I got this cup future, but I say if you have no Stanley Cup futures bet pending, I would say if you're going to bet the series price right now, I would say Vegas because I'm going to go with them in the series. Although personally for me, I'm going to take a little shot with Florida for the position. My best bet here for this series, if you will, I'm going to go with that Jonathan Marchessault. So again, top point scorer, plus upwards of plus 900. At a couple of books, but that is extreme value. Not only is he in great form, going back to the tail end of the Edmonton series, I think it's like 11 points in the last 6 playoff games or 8 playoff games for Marchessault. But not only is he just on fire offensively, but he's got that angle that Jared thankfully reminded me of here today, that he also got let go or unprotected. That's the word. Unprotected by the Florida Panthers in the expansion draft. So a chance to really show the Florida Panthers organize. Now there's a lot of changes, I'm sure, coaching, management, and obviously personnel since he was there, but no question. Still, it's the organization that said, "Hey, we'll leave Jonathan Marchessault unprotected, instead of someone else." So that fuels you. And I expect him to have that in the back of his mind. And like I say, he's just playing so well. And I think he's got a real shot, especially at that price, upwards of plus 900 for Jonathan Marchessault, top point scorer in the NHL Stanley Cup final. So I'll go with that for best bet. Jared, it's been great. Thanks again for doing this. Thanks for joining us. And we shout out to everyone in the chat. Rich H saying, great, Jared. It's one of the best guests we've had. GT saying that as well. So we really do appreciate the kind words. What's the quick question? Would you please? He's not a better man, JT. He's always asking our guests, will you join us on the betcasts? We have Eddie Lack on the betcast, but he's into sports betting big time. Eddie Lack, now that he's retired from hockey, but he's invited, Jared. But yeah, like I say, he's not into the betting side of things. But like I say, his hockey analysis is great, and that's the thing about this show. You don't have to be into betting for us to want you on the show. If you played the game at any level and you know the game and you have great analysis, definitely we want you here on the Ice Guys show. Jared, it's been great. Final words before we shut her down.
Just thank you to everybody who tuned in and for the nice comments. It's fun to share my experiences. I think it's important for just anybody in anything, whether you're listening to a sporting podcast or business or whatever, is that it's the people that have success or want to learn success have to understand and hear every part of the journey, not just the good stuff. And so thanks for allowing me to be a part of it. I had a lot of fun. I'd love to come back on and chat, tell some stories, and just interact with everybody.
And like I say to Jared and everyone that's on this show as a guest, if there's ever a time they want to try to throw a couple of bucks on a game, I'd be happy to help. And we try to point them in the right direction, no doubt. Thanks to everyone for joining us. A reminder, the Ice Guys will be live throughout the Stanley Cup Finals on game days, so make sure you join us for that. For our special guest, Jared Allen, I'm Ian Cameron, and Alex B. Smith, of course, earlier. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Wednesday, and we will see you next on Saturday at noon Eastern, and we'll preview Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals on the Saturday edition of the Ice Guys, presented by National Hockey Now.